Okay. Hi, I'm Rory. I'm a senior. I'm from right outside of Central Ohio. I'm captain of the boys golf team, and I have a really big passion for architecture, and that is basically why I wrote this paper. So my paper is called Evolution of Architecture in Catholic Churches from 1700 to Present. Are we taking away from our spiritual life as we progress to modernism? Okay, there we go. So why I wrote this paper, I grew up in a 1917 Georgian revival home, which really influenced my level of architecture and what I was always around. I grew up Catholic also, so I was always around very elegant architecture styles, very dramatic, very detailed, and it always just left me wanting more. So once I saw this architecture and I was around it all the time, when I would go to other churches with friends or other family members, I realized why I loved the Catholic Church so much is because of all the detail and how it made me feel as I was in Mass or watching a baptism or anything into the Mass. I fell in love with it. It's all I've really ever known, and I grew up around it, and it always stuck with me. And I know that no matter where my life will take me, it will always be a point in my life. Because of my love for architecture so much, I began drawing more, and I always loved how straight lines and how just making buildings looked. It just always fulfilled any bit of OCD I had or just making everything look perfect. I loved it. So this um, eventually led me into wanting to travel more. My family always grew up, we always grew up watching videos from Italy and just all around Europe. So when I was given the opportunity to go to Spain and Italy, I jumped at the opportunity and I took it because it is just such a big part for me. So the reason I traveled, so when I traveled in Italy, I stayed in there for a week around Christmas time, right after Christmas. So I experienced New Year's. I went to Florence, Rome, and Venice. I was able to see cathedrals. I was able to see the Vatican. I was able to see basically all the main aspects of Rome you would expect. And then while I was in Spain, I stayed right outside central Spain, and then I also went to Barcelona. And I was also able to see a bunch of cathedrals and just all around seeing the culture and how they do everything. So here are some pictures from my trip to Italy. And this architecture completely changed my life seeing this. This is on the Jubilee year, um, I think January 1st. So this was Mass in the Vatican City. And all this architecture just really made me feel a certain way and really helped me develop my idea for this paper. While I was in Spain, I was also able to go into some of these amazing churches all around. For this first picture, it has like a hole in the ceiling with a bunch of angels around it and saints. And like to me, it feels like that heaven is looking down upon us. And it really made me see the bigger picture of what these architects have always been trying to do that I've always looked past. Even though Spain is more of a Gothic style of architecture, it still helps fulfill a feeling. While in Italy, it's very light colors with very much of gold. But while in Spain, it's just a little bit more of a Gothic feeling. Mainly makes you think about the crucifixion, while Italy is about the ascension and like the birth of Jesus. So here are more pictures. It's very Gothic, but also still beautiful, and it still makes you feel like you're in a holy place. So back onto my paper. With all of my experiences going into my paper, I was really fascinated to learn about this. So one of the main things I was really wanting to understand is how the history took a toll on where we are now. So the history is so important because it just shapes how we have architects now and how they've grown over the years. So they face multiple challenges of the industrialization and changing from materials, One of the most common ones are brick and stone were changed to steel or iron. And this just really grew and elevated our way of architecture. Like the industrialization completely changed everything. And then now, obviously, we're into electronics, and that has completely changed everything. The US was heavily influenced by Europe because it is such a young country compared to Europe. I really wanted to show how the United States was heavily influenced because without the influence of Europe, the US would not be where they are now. And one of the main things during this time of the 1700s is everybody was moving from the countryside to the cities, making the space very limited, and they really had to grow to understand how this new way of living would be able to work for them. So my main part of my paper, I talk about building philosophy. And before this paper, I didn't understand what building philosophy was. But once I started researching, I really understood it is such a big, important part, and this is why architects do what they do. For me, I am going to be a future architect. That's what I'm going to go to college for. So I always want, no matter what I'm designing or what I'm building, I always want it to have a feeling. And building philosophy is the behind all the designs, what goes into our architecture. Mainly in these churches, the main reference that they hone in on is the biblical reference. They use the Bible and they use Stations of the Cross to show why we are in the church. The Stations of the Cross are a very big part of the church. It's all around the church and it shows every step in leading up to Jesus' crucifixion. And even though this can be a darker sense, it still opens you up, allowing you to understand that he died and it wasn't all happy. And even though the Bible always it will obviously show the darkness and the light, it really goes to show again why we are in these churches and why we need to be in these churches to repent. So we have all the senses we have, these churches strive to engage. Obviously, our sight, we get to see all the beautiful gold, all the pictures, all the designs. With our touch, we are able to touch everything around us, like the little details, even just on the pews. And when somebody puts so much detail into the pews, you can really understand why this is such a big importance, because they wouldn't take the time to put in this amount of detail and energy into something that they didn't really care for. Another one is scent. For me, my favorite smell of walking into a church is the incense smell. The smell will take your brain into a way of peace of mind and allow you to be completely ready for Mass and help you engage into it even more. Another one is sound. Sound allows you to open up, again, your brain. And when you have these specific sounds every single time when you come into Mass, it will help you get ready for Mass and it will take any other thing off your mind just so you can be completely ready. So upon my college, when I was looking at colleges, I met with a professor that helped me tour Notre Dame's architecture. And I was able to come in contact with him, and he allowed me to ask him a few questions. And when I asked him, as we see new churches built with a more simplistic modern architecture style, what impact do you believe this has on the community? Does it affect or engage the community? He tells me people tend to engage less with structures that they do not feel personal connection to. If people don't want to spend time in a place because it's not visually pleasing to them, then attendance and therefore engagement will diminish substantially. And this just goes to show exactly how I feel about these churches and why it is such a big importance. Is if you do not feel connected to it emotionally, you will never come back. You will never be fully fulfilled within it. So this is why I think as we progress to modernism, more and more people are pulling away because people they go in and they just sit in a box and it feels like they're not looking at anything. And to some, it might be better because they can really feel the Holy Spirit. But to others, when you see all the beauty around you, it really can help you. And then talking with my um, Father Thompson, when I asked him for his thoughts on how simplistic and modern architecture style is being built, the impact it has on the community, and whether it affects the engagement of people in the community. He states that the contemporary simplistic style fails to inspire souls and communicate that something supernatural is happening within. People gravitate to the object beauty of the collective wisdom and our artistic tradition, which occurred over the centuries instead of the impersonal and passing whims of any given age, which seems to convey that the activity inside is also self-temporary in some way. He helps me show my readers that it is a bigger picture. Whenever you're in a church, it is always a bigger picture, and that everything that we do is for a reason. So, with all my information, I was able to get my point across showing that these are very specific reasons to why it helped me come back to the church and stay in it, and hopefully would help others. So that is all I have. So I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you, Rori. That was such a novel presentation. I really enjoyed hearing about all of your thoughts and feelings around, the senses that you experience when you enter a church that you like. So I have a couple of questions for you. In your research, did you notice any regional differences? I know you spoke a little bit about the difference between Spanish churches and Italian churches, but even within America, did you notice any differences with how these churches were built and evolved?
Yes, one of the main differences is, which my whole point was showing the progression to modernism and how everything has changed. And my timeline was the 1700s to now. In the 1700s, everything was very detail oriented, and it was very, you could just tell that they took their time on anything that they built. And then going over to the US again was very influenced by Europe. They took some of the same aspects as Italy and Spain had, but then as they started getting going as a country, they began to build their own. And those really depicted, they don't always change between the three countries, and obviously more to come. So this always helps you distinct which one was which. And like Italy was very light, the light colors and kind of a light gold, while Spain is very gothic, so it's kind of more of a dark red or browns and then more of a darker gold. So that always helps you kind of understand what they were really trying to get at.
Fascinating. Thank you. And then did you see examples today where contemporary architects are successfully blending this traditional design of old European churches and modern design that we see more typically in America?
Yes, I feel like some of these architects are trying to bring back what we originally had, because more and more of these churches are getting refurbished and being ultimately changed and not how they usually or how they used to be. So I feel like architects now, especially in some of the college programs I've looked at, they send you away to Europe so you can learn about the architecture from years and years and years ago to help you understand where it came from, how to do it, and how to recreate it, so we can come back to the U.S. and show and also replicate it in a way, so we can bring it back, because it is definitely missed, and it is something that our country and the world is currently losing at the moment.
Very, very cool. And I know you spoke a little bit about the relationship between these older styles of architecture in European churches and the closeness with the community or the belonging of the church, and feeling like you want to go to church when you feel that the space really helps you connect. Can you expand a little bit on that? Have you noticed that, that's why perhaps people in the States with not as ornate churches aren't going to church as more, or how you kind of see that?
Well, from personal experiences, when I'm at church, a regular Sunday Mass is not as extravagant as obviously Christmas Eve Mass or Christmas Day or Easter, any big holiday. So in those masses, they typically always have their incense, maybe trumpets. My favorite part of going to church, especially on these big holidays, is they typically have trumpets. And
Mm.
when you are just surrounded by these elements, they really help you. They just create a feeling because it's a great feeling, and it just helps you understand more. It's it can kind of be hard to explain, but once you're there and you have the smell of incense and you see all the gold around you, all the beautiful details they have, and it shows you again that there's a bigger picture. And then when you go into more of a different type of church that is not, it's more casual, which can always be amazing. I love casual, but they don't have the whole, you don't touch the holy water, and you just go in and sit down, and it's a little bit more laid back, so it makes your mind wander more. But when you have so much to look at, you're or fascinated with it all, and you're understanding what it is and why it's there. And once I took a deeper dive into figure out why they do it like this, it helped me understand and helped me become better in my faith because I understood what was all around me. And this is the whole point of my paper, and I was hoping some other people would understand because it definitely has helped me over the past few months.
Wonderful, Rory. Thank you for that. And final question for you. If you could advise future church architects, what principles would you insist they hold on to?
I definitely believe in columns. I love dynamic columns. I love how it makes any type of building feel much more grand, and it just makes a whole different vibe of the entire building. I love stained glass windows too. That is something I didn't touch on too much in my project, but it definitely shows it's again another form of picture, but it catches your eye because it shows the light, which I always use the sun kind of with heaven, so it always feels like heaven is coming in on you. Um, Definitely, those are the biggest things for me. And another reason I do love these Catholic churches, especially in Italy and Spain, and even my home church, is how they do the ceiling. So whenever you look up, no matter where you look, there's always going to be something. And my Catholic church has flowers on the ceiling, and that also is just another point that I love. I love having some sort of design on a ceiling, or just any type of that design really should always be carried.
Wonderful. Thank you so, so much, Rory. That was a really,
Thank
really
you.
original presentation.